Imagine a devastating truth. Studies reveal that nearly 70% of adult children who consistently disrespect their parents were, in their formative years, excessively protected or coddled, leading to an arrested emotional development where they perceive their parents not as individuals worthy of autonomy, but as extensions of their own needs and desires, perpetually available and without boundaries. This isn't merely about occasional teenage rebellion or generational gaps. It's a profound, often heartbreaking breakdown in the fundamental architecture of familial esteem. A silent epidemic shattering the very foundations of countless homes. For too many parents, the twilight years, meant for peace and reflection, are instead overshadowed by a crushing weight of emotional neglect and outright contempt from the very children they poured their lives into raising. The emotional toll is immeasurable, a constant ache in the heart that gnaws at one's self-worth. You, the parent, feel diminished, invisible, as if your decades of sacrifice and unwavering love have somehow become a currency of obligation, spent and forgotten. It's a pain that runs deeper than mere disagreement. It's the sting of being dismissed, unheard, your wisdom devalued, your very presence tolerated rather than cherished. This disrespect manifests in 1,000 tiny cuts: the ignored phone calls, the condescending tone, the unsolicited advice that masquerades as concern but is steeped in judgment, the outright dismissal of your feelings and boundaries. Often, these parents, with bewildered eyes and heavy hearts, look back at their parenting choices, agonizing over where they might have erred. Was it the endless second chances, the sacrifices made for their children's comfort, the constant putting of their children's needs above their own? The insidious truth is that often, the very acts of profound love and protection, when taken to an extreme, inadvertently sowed the seeds of future disrespect. It's a cruel irony that the desire to shield a child from hardship can strip them of the very resilience and empathy needed to appreciate the sacrifices made on their behalf. The root of this pervasive disrespect frequently lies in a concept that might initially feel counterintuitive: a lack of appropriate boundaries during childhood, evolving into a blurred understanding of individual autonomy in adulthood. From a young age, if a child is never truly made to confront the consequences of their actions, if every obstacle is removed, every desire fulfilled, and every discomfort instantly alleviated, they develop an entitled worldview. They come to believe that the world, and specifically, their parents, owe them ease and comfort. Perpetually, this phenomenon isn't new, but its prevalence seems to be amplified in an era where helicopter parenting and snowplow parenting have become common vernacular. Helicopter parents hover, constantly intervening, while snowplow parents clear every path, removing all obstacles. While born of profound love, this intensity of intervention often denies children the crucial developmental experiences of struggle, failure, and self-reliance. They never truly learn the weight of responsibility because the weight is always borne by someone else, usually their parents. When a child reaches adulthood without having cultivated a robust sense of personal agency and accountability, the dynamic with their parents often remains stuck in a perpetual state of childhood dependency, albeit a more covert one. They still expect their parents to provide, to solve, to absorb their emotional burdens, but they resent the perceived control or obligation that comes with it. This resentment can fester into overt disrespect, a subconscious lashing out against the very people who enabled their lack of independent growth. The parent, in their eyes, is a resource, not a person. Consider the parent who consistently bailed their child out of financial trouble, no matter how dire or each loan, each debt paid, while seemingly an act of boundless love, can inadvertently communicate a message: you don't need to be truly responsible, because I will always catch you. When that adult child then continues to struggle financially and expects ongoing support, any hesitation or boundary from the parent is met with indignation, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal. How dare you deny me? You always have. Similarly, parents who never allowed their children to experience the natural consequences of their academic or social choices, constantly intervening with teachers, coaches, or friends, inadvertently created a fragile self-esteem. When these children become adults, facing the harsh realities of professional or romantic failures, they often project their frustrations and anxieties onto their parents. The parent becomes the convenient scapegoat, the embodiment of a world that once protected them but now feels relentlessly unfair. Their discomfort becomes your fault. The emotional landscape of such a relationship is fraught with unspoken expectations and simmering resentments. The adult child, having never truly had to navigate adversity independently, hasn't developed the empathy to understand the emotional and physical toll their demands take on their aging parents. They see their parents' time, energy, and resources as commodities to be consumed rather than precious gifts to be respected. This can manifest in startlingly dismissive behavior. From canceling plans last minute without apology to making significant life decisions without consulting or even informing their parents, viewing their input as an imposition rather than a valued perspective. This pattern isn't solely about financial or practical dependence. It extends deeply into emotional territory. If parents consistently prioritized their child's feelings and comfort over their own throughout childhood, perpetually suppressing their own needs to cater to their child's emotional landscape, the adult child often fails to recognize their parents as individuals with their own emotional lives, vulnerabilities, and boundaries. The parent becomes a functional object, an emotional sponge, always available to absorb their child's frustrations, but rarely offered reciprocal emotional support. The subtle yet profound impact of this emotional imbalance is devastating. The parent, feeling drained and invisible, often internalizes the disrespect, believing they are somehow unworthy or flawed. They might desperately seek validation, trying harder to please, to fix, to provide, only to find themselves deeper in the cycle of emotional exploitation. This dynamic can erode their self-esteem, leading to anxiety, depression, and a crushing sense of loneliness, even within their own family unit. Breaking this cycle requires immense courage and a profound shift in perspective, both for the parent and, ideally, for the adult child, though the initial impetus must often come from the parent. The first, and arguably most difficult, step is recognizing that you, the parent, are not solely responsible for your adult child's behavior, nor are you obligated to tolerate disrespect. Your love, while unconditional, does not equate to infinite endurance of unkindness. This realization often feels like a betrayal of one's deepest maternal or paternal instincts, a harsh awakening from the dream of reciprocal familial love. It's important to understand that asserting boundaries is not a rejection of love. It is an affirmation of self-worth and a necessary step towards fostering a healthier, more respectful relationship. It's about teaching through action what was not adequately taught through words or experience. During formative years, that every individual, regardless of their role, deserves respect. One crucial area where this revaluation must occur is in the realm of financial support. While it is natural for parents to want to help their children, particularly in difficult economic times, There comes a point where aid transforms into enablement, and generosity morphs into expectation. Drawing clear, firm lines around financial assistance is often one of the most immediate and impactful ways to begin shifting the power dynamic. This might involve setting limits on the amount, purpose, or frequency of aid, or even halting it entirely. Explaining clearly that the expectation of constant financial support prevents the adult child from developing their own financial independence and responsibility. The immediate reaction to such boundaries is often anger, resentment, and even accusations of abandonment. This is precisely where the emotional maturity gap becomes glaringly evident. An emotionally mature adult child would, even if disappointed, understand and perhaps even appreciate the parent's position. An entitled adult child, however, perceives this as a personal attack, a withholding of what they feel is owed to them. This is the crucial moment for the parent to remain steadfast, understanding that this backlash is not a sign of failure, but an indication that the boundary is hitting its mark. Beyond finances, boundaries must extend to time and emotional energy. Are you constantly dropping everything to cater to your adult child's last-minute demands? Are you perpetually listening to their complaints without any reciprocal interest in your life? Do they call only when they need something, never simply to connect? It's vital to recognize that your time and emotional bandwidth are finite resources, not an endless wellspring to be drawn from without consideration. Learning to say no or not now without guilt is a profound act of self-preservation. It might involve setting specific times for calls, declining to participate in drama, or simply stating, "I'm not able to help with that right now." This is not about being punitive. It's about modeling healthy boundaries and self. It teaches them that you have your own life, your own commitments, and your own needs, and that their desires do not automatically supersede your own. The language used in these conversations is as critical as the boundaries themselves. It should be calm, clear, and focused on your feelings and needs, rather than accusatory. Instead of "you always demand too much," try, "I feel overwhelmed when I'm constantly asked to rearrange my schedule, and I need to prioritize my own commitments." This I language prevents the conversation from devolving into a defensive argument and instead focuses on personal needs and limits. Another significant area of contention is unsolicited advice and judgment. Many adult children, particularly those who have been overparented, struggle to see their parents as competent adults with their own agency. They might constantly offer helpful suggestions that feel more like criticisms, or outright dismiss a parent's choices regarding their home, health, or relationships. This dynamic is incredibly disempowering for the parent, making them feel infantilized and devalued. Establishing boundaries around this requires asserting your autonomy with grace and firmness. When unsolicited advice is offered, a simple, "Thank you for your input, but I've already considered that and made my decision," or "I appreciate your concern, but I'm comfortable with how I'm handling this," can effectively shut down the condescending commentary without fueling a full-blown argument. The key is to convey that your choices are your own, and your adult child's approval is not required for your decisions. The emotional impact of this journey for the parent is profound. It can feel like walking through a minefield, constantly questioning every step. There will be moments of doubt, guilt, and deep sadness. The idealized vision of family harmony may feel shattered, replaced by a raw, often painful reality. However, enduring this emotional discomfort is a necessary rite of passage towards reclaiming your dignity and fostering a potentially healthier future for the relationship. It is an act of self-love, and paradoxically, an act of tough love for your adult child. It is crucial for parents to cultivate a strong support system outside of their relationship with their adult children. This might involve connecting with friends, other family members, or even a therapist who can provide an objective perspective and emotional validation. Sharing these experiences with others who understand can alleviate the profound isolation that often accompanies this particular form of familial distress. Knowing you are not alone in this struggle can be an immense source of strength. Moreover, investing in your own life, passions, and interests becomes paramount. When a parent's entire identity has been wrapped up in their role as a caregiver, the eventual shift in the parent-child dynamic can leave a profound void. Actively pursuing hobbies, volunteer work, or new social connections not only enriches the parent's life, but also subtly communicates to the adult child that the parent has a fulfilling existence, independent of their demands. This modeling of autonomy can, over time, subtly encourage the adult child to develop their own sense of purpose beyond their parents. The ultimate goal of setting these boundaries is not to punish the adult child or sever ties, but to foster a relationship built on mutual respect, understanding, and appropriate independence. It's about recalibrating the dynamic so that love can flourish without being overshadowed by resentment and obligation. A parent deserves to be seen as an individual with their own feelings, dreams, and boundaries, not just as a perpetual resource. While there is no guarantee that an adult child will respond positively or immediately to these changes, the act of reclaiming your dignity is transformative for the parent, regardless of the child's reaction. It restores a sense of self-worth that may have been eroded over years of disrespect. It empowers the parent to live their life on their own terms, free from the constant burden of catering to an ungrateful adult child. This internal shift is, in itself, a profound victory. In some painful cases, despite best efforts and firm boundaries, the adult child may choose to distance themselves or escalate their disrespectful behavior. This outcome, though heartbreaking, must be met with the difficult recognition that you cannot force someone to respect you. In such situations, the most loving act for yourself might be to create emotional distance, to protect your peace and well-being. This does not mean abandoning your child, but rather protecting your own sanity from a toxic dynamic that refuses to change. It is an agonizing decision, but one born of self-preservation and a profound understanding that you are worthy of peace. Ultimately, the surprising reason adult children disrespect their parents often stems from a well-intentioned but ultimately detrimental overparenting that prevents the child from developing empathy, resilience, and a mature understanding of boundaries. The path to reclaiming respect is paved with courage, clear communication, and unwavering self. It is a journey of defining your own worth, asserting your autonomy, and demanding the fundamental dignity that every individual, especially a loving parent, profoundly deserves. The peace found on the other side of this difficult transformation is not just a dream, but a rightful legacy. The peace found on the other side of this difficult transformation is not just a dream, but a rightful legacy. But how does one truly begin to build this legacy, brick by painstaking brick, when the foundations have been so deeply eroded? It's a journey that demands more than just intellectual understanding. It requires an unwavering commitment to self-reclamation, a fierce belief in one's own intrinsic value, and the courageous resolve to dismantle years of ingrained patterns. Imagine Sarah, a woman in her late 60s, her once vibrant eyes now perpetually shadowed by the weight of her adult son. Mark, 38, successful in his career, yet utterly dependent on Sarah for emotional validation. financial bailouts, and endless domestic assistance. His calls always began with a demand, ended with a subtle jab, and left Sarah feeling hollowed out. She had spent a lifetime anticipating his needs, solving his problems, and cushioning every fall. Her home had an open-door policy that meant he often dropped by unannounced, expecting meals, laundry, and childcare for his own children, always with the underlying assumption that her time was his to command. One Tuesday, Mark called, not to check in, but to inform Sarah that he needed her to pick up his kids from school, citing an urgent, last-minute work commitment. Sarah, who had a long-awaited appointment with a friend she hadn't seen in months, felt the familiar knot of dread and obligation tighten in her stomach. For decades, her immediate response would have been a breathless, "Of course, dear," followed by a frantic reshuffling of her own life. But something had shifted. The ache in her heart had morphed into a dull, persistent throb of exhaustion. This time, as she opened her mouth, a different phrase, tentative but firm, emerged. "Mark, I can't. I have an appointment, I can't reschedule." A beat of stunned silence on the other end. Sarah braced herself. Then, the ice-cold dismissiveness she knew so well. "You have an appointment. What could possibly be more important than your grandchildren needing you?" "I'm talking about my career, Mom. This is serious." His tone was laced with accusation, designed to induce maximum guilt. Sarah felt her resolve waver, the ingrained programming screaming at her to capitulate. But then she remembered the words of a friend, "Your worth isn't measured by your utility to others." Taking a deep breath, her voice trembled slightly but held firm. "Mark, I love you and the children, but I also have my own life and commitments. I understand this is an inconvenience for you, but I'm not available." She offered no further explanation, no apology. The silence was heavier this time, thick with unvoiced outrage. Then, a click. He had hung up on her, the phone slipped from Sarah's hand, clattering onto the sofa cushion. A wave of nausea washed over her, followed by a sudden, intense wave of grief. Grief for the relationship she thought she had. Grief for the imagined perfect family. The tears came then, hot and stinging, but beneath them, a tiny spark. A spark of pride. She had done it. She had held her boundary. The initial fallout was exactly as expected. Mark didn't call for a week. When he finally did, his tone was cool, formal, still tinged with resentment. He didn't apologize, nor did she expect him to. But she had sent a message, not just to him, but more importantly, to herself. This is the genesis of change. These small, agonizing acts of self-assertion. They feel monumental because they challenge a lifetime of ingrained patterns and an unspoken contract of endless parental sacrifice. For the adult child accustomed to an on-demand parent, any boundary feels like an attack, a personal affront. They have been taught, often inadvertently, that their needs supersede all others, and to deny them is an act of betrayal. This is why the initial pushback is often so severe, so emotionally charged. It's a test, an attempt to reassert the old dynamic. To see if the parent will crack. The parent, in turn, must brace for this storm. It's not just about setting a boundary. It's about holding it. It's about accepting that you cannot control your adult child's reaction, only your own response. This requires an almost zen-like detachment from their anger, their guilt trips, their silent treatments. Each act of holding firm, no matter how small, reinforces your newly established sense of self-worth and gradually, painstakingly, begins to redefine the parameters of the relationship. Consider the parent whose adult child constantly criticizes their choices, from their clothing to their finances, their hobbies to their friends. This barrage of unsolicited judgment is a subtle form of control, a way of keeping the parent in a subservient, almost childlike position. It implies, you are not capable, you need my guidance. You need my approval. To counter this, a parent must develop a repertoire of responses that assert their autonomy without escalating conflict. For instance, when an adult child says, "Mom, why are you still wearing that old coat? It makes you look so frumpy," instead of defensively explaining or hurtfully internalizing, a parent could calmly reply, "I like this coat, and I'm comfortable in it, or my fashion choices are my own, thank you." The simplicity is powerful. It doesn't invite debate. It simply states a fact. This is my boundary around my personal choices, and your opinion is not invited here. The key is to deliver these statements without anger, but with an unshakable, quiet authority. These conversations are often uncomfortable, even painful. The adult child may accuse the parent of being sensitive, difficult, or even mean. This is another tactic, a form of emotional manipulation designed to make the parent doubt their own feelings and actions. It's crucial for the parent to recognize these tactics for what they are: attempts to deflect responsibility and re-establish the old power dynamic. A mantra might be, "Their reaction is about them, not about me." The journey of reclaiming dignity also extends to managing emotional dependence. Many adult children use their parents as an emotional dumping ground, offloading their frustrations, anxieties, and relationship problems without ever offering reciprocal support. The parent becomes a therapist, a confidant, a punching bag, absorbing negativity without ever having their own emotional needs met. This drains the parent, leaving them feeling exhausted and unappreciated. Establishing boundaries here means learning to redirect, to limit, or even to disengage from these one-sided emotional exchanges. When an adult child calls primarily to vent or complain, a parent can politely interrupt with, "I hear you're going through a lot right now. Have you considered talking to a professional about this?" Or, "I'm not able to absorb all of this right now, but I hope you find a solution." This isn't about being unfeeling. It's about protecting your own emotional well-being, and, crucially, encouraging your adult child to develop their own coping mechanisms and support systems, rather than perpetually relying on you. It's an act of tough love that fosters true growth. For the parent who has always been the fixer, the hardest boundary to set might be allowing their adult child to experience natural consequences. If a child repeatedly makes poor financial decisions, or struggles in their career due to a lack of effort, the instinct to intervene, to rescue, is overwhelming. This is where the long-term impact of overparenting truly manifests. As the child has never learned the vital lessons of responsibility and resilience that come from navigating adversity independently. The act of stepping back, though agonizing, is paramount. It might mean allowing a child to face a minor eviction, to struggle with a job loss, or to endure the discomfort of a difficult situation they created. This is not about being punitive. It's about providing the crucible in which genuine self-reliance is forged. The parent's role shifts from problem solver to supportive observer, offering empathy but not intervention. "I'm sorry you're going through this, and I love you, but you'll need to figure out a plan," is a powerful statement of belief in their child's capacity. Even if the child initially perceives it as abandonment, this shift in dynamic often brings an initial period of intense discomfort, even open hostility. The adult child, accustomed to the safety net, will likely feel abandoned and betrayed. They might lash out with accusations of being unloving, selfish, or cold. This is the ultimate test of the parent's resolve. To hold firm in the face of such emotional attacks requires an internal anchor, a deep understanding that this difficult phase is necessary for the long-term health of both individuals and the relationship itself. What helps parents sustain this challenging path? For one, the aforementioned support system is invaluable. Friends who have navigated similar issues, or a therapist specializing in family dynamics, can provide crucial validation and strategies. Knowing you are not alone in this unique form of familial pain can be immensely comforting and empowering. These external anchors prevent the parent from being swept away by the guilt and doubt often manufactured by the adult child's reactions. Another critical component is self-compassion. The guilt that often accompanies setting boundaries with one's children can be debilitating. Parents often internalize the blame for their children's adult behavior, forgetting that their child is an autonomous individual responsible for their own choices. It's essential to practice self-forgiveness for past parenting choices made from love, even if they inadvertently led to unforeseen challenges. The goal is not to dwell on past mistakes, but to learn from them and to move forward with wisdom and grace. Cultivating a rich, independent life also plays a transformative role. When a parent's identity is solely defined by their role as a parent, the shift in dynamic with an adult child can leave them feeling bereft and purposeless. Actively pursuing personal interests, hobbies, travel, volunteer work, new friendships, creative endeavors not only brings joy and fulfillment, but also subtly communicates to the adult child that the parent has a vibrant existence, independent of their demands. This modeling of autonomy can, over time, inspire the adult child to seek their own sense of purpose and self-sufficiency. This is what happened with Sarah. After the initial phone call where Mark hung up, she went to her friend's appointment, feeling a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. She spoke openly about her struggles, her friend listening with understanding eyes. That conversation, that shared vulnerability, was a balm. Over the next few months, Sarah consciously started filling her life with activities that brought her joy. She joined a book club, started painting again, and volunteered at a local animal shelter. She still saw her grandchildren, but on her terms, making sure Mark knew her availability well in advance, and politely declining last-minute requests. The change wasn't instant, nor was it always smooth. Mark tried various tactics: passive aggression, appeals to family loyalty, even attempting to triangulate through other family members. But Sarah, fortified by her burgeoning self-respect and newfound support system, held firm. She learned to respond with calm, concise statements like, "That doesn't work for me," or "I've already made other plans," without offering lengthy justifications. The less she explained, the less room there was for argument. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the dynamic began to shift. Mark, forced to confront consequences, started taking more responsibility for his own childcare and financial planning. The emotional dumping calls lessened. He began to call, not just when he needed something, but occasionally, to genuinely share something about his day. The resentment didn't vanish entirely, but it began to dissipate, replaced by a grudging, nascent respect. The ultimate aim of this challenging work is not to achieve a perfect, idealized relationship, but a healthier one. It's about moving from a dynamic of obligation and exploitation to one of mutual respect and appropriate independence. A parent deserves to experience the fruits of their labor, not to be eternally drained by the very individuals they raised. They deserve to be cherished for who they are, not just for what they can provide. This journey is about reclaiming the sacred space of self. Understanding that true love, both for oneself and for one's children, thrives not in limitless sacrifice, but in healthy boundaries and mutual esteem. In some profound instances, this transformation can lead to a deeper, more authentic connection than ever before. When the adult child finally understands that their parent is a complete individual with their own needs and boundaries, they are sometimes capable of developing a more mature, reciprocal relationship. They may, for the first time, truly see their parent, not as an extension of themselves, but as a person worthy of respect and independent existence. This revelation, though often painful in its genesis, can be the foundation for a relationship that is truly adult, built on mutual admiration rather than childhood dependency. However, it is equally important to acknowledge that not all adult children will respond positively. Some may be so deeply entrenched in their entitled worldview that they are incapable of accepting these new boundaries. In such heartbreaking cases, the parent's act of self-reclamation might unfortunately lead to a greater distance in the relationship, or even an estrangement. This is perhaps the most painful outcome, one that no parent ever desires. Yet, even in this scenario, the parent's journey is not in vain. To choose peace and self-respect, even at the cost of a strained relationship, is a testament to profound inner strength. It's an affirmation that your well-being matters, that you are worthy of tranquility, and that you cannot sacrifice your entire self on the altar of a relationship that refuses to become healthy. This decision is not about abandoning your child. It is about protecting your own spirit. It's about recognizing that you cannot force someone to respect you, and you cannot indefinitely endure a dynamic that poisons your own life. The wisdom gained from this crucible of familial rediscovery is invaluable. It teaches parents that their legacy is not just the children they raised, but the integrated, self-respecting individual they ultimately become. It's a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to evolve, to heal, and to claim its rightful space. The peace found is not a passive absence of conflict, but an active, hard-won serenity born of courage. It is the quiet strength of knowing you did everything you could, that you set the necessary limits, and that you, finally, chose yourself. This is the ultimate act of love, for yourself and, perhaps, eventually, for the adult child, who may one day come to understand it. So, for any parent silently struggling under the weight of an adult child's disrespect, understand this: your journey is not just about changing their behavior, but about rediscovering your own power. It's about redrawing the blueprint of your own life, recognizing that the love you gave so freely must also be extended to yourself. The narrative of your life does not end when your children reach adulthood. It merely enters a new, often more profound chapter. A chapter where your voice, your needs, and your dignity are not just acknowledged, but fiercely honored. A chapter where you finally become the protagonist of your own story once again, with the serene authority of a life lived with integrity and hard-won peace. This isn't just about survival. It's about thriving, about experiencing the richly deserved joy and respect that are your inherent birthright, no matter the challenges, no matter the choices of others. It's about embodying the dignity that was always within you, simply waiting to be fully expressed. It's about embodying the dignity that was always within you, simply waiting to be fully expressed. This expression, however, is not a sudden, dramatic outburst, but a quiet, persistent cultivation, like a garden slowly reclaiming its wild beauty after years of neglect. It's in the way you hold yourself, the unwavering gaze you meet criticism with, the gentle but firm tone you employ when stating a boundary. It's a return to self, a homecoming to the person you were before the demands of parenthood eclipsed your individual light. refined and strengthened by the very challenges that once threatened to extinguish it. This journey, though initiated by the painful reality of disrespect, ultimately transcends the specific dynamic with an adult child. It becomes a profound lesson in self-love and personal sovereignty that ripples through every facet of the parent's life. They learn to value their own time not just in relation to their children's needs, but for its intrinsic worth, for reading, for pursuing passions, for simply existing in peace. They learn to trust their own judgment again, silencing the internalized critical voice that was often an echo of their adult child's condescension. This newfound confidence empowers them in other relationships, in their communities, and in their own personal pursuits. The transformation is often subtle but deeply felt. The anxious checking of the phone for a call that never comes, or a call that always brings demands, slowly fades, replaced by a calm acceptance, a sense of liberation. The parent understands that their peace is not contingent on their adult child's approval or reciprocal affection, but on their own integrity and resilience. This doesn't mean the love diminishes. Rather, it matures. It becomes a love that acknowledges separateness, celebrates individuality, and respects the sacred space of each person's journey. It's a love that, paradoxically, can become stronger and more authentic because it is no longer burdened by resentment or obligation. And what of the adult child? While the focus here has been on the parent's journey, it is worth contemplating the potential long-term impact on the adult child. When the constant safety net is removed, when the emotional wellspring runs dry for their one-sided demands, a new reality sets in. For some, this shock can be the catalyst for their own belated growth. They might, for the first time, truly grapple with their own responsibilities, develop their own coping mechanisms, and build their own support systems. This period of discomfort, though initially met with anger and resistance, can ultimately lead to a more robust, self-reliant adult, capable of genuine, reciprocal relationships. It's a difficult awakening, but a necessary one. To recognize that the boundless generosity of a parent is not an endless entitlement. They may eventually come to appreciate the strength and courage their parent demonstrated, understanding that the boundaries, though painful, were ultimately an act of profound love, a love that refused to enable perpetual immaturity. This realization, if it comes, is a gift, a chance to forge a new kind of relationship, one built on mutual respect and genuine admiration, rather than the vestiges of childhood dependency. However, the parent embarking on this path must do so without attachment to this specific outcome. The journey is primarily for themselves, for their own healing and self-reclamation. If the adult child evolves, it is a bonus. If they do not, the parent has still achieved an invaluable victory, the restoration of their own dignity and peace. This internal shift is the true legacy, a testament to the enduring human capacity for growth and resilience, even in the most challenging of family dynamics. The final message, then, is one of unwavering empowerment. You, the parent, are not just a historical artifact of your children's upbringing, a resource to be tapped, or a silent recipient of disrespect. You are a living, breathing individual, vibrant with your own history, wisdom, and desires. Your life holds immense value independent of your children's recognition. To claim this truth, to live it fiercely and unapologetically, is not selfish. It is an act of profound self-preservation and, in its deepest essence, an act of love that teaches the most vital lesson: respect begins with self. It is the ultimate boundary, drawn not with anger, but with the quiet authority of one who knows their worth. a beacon guiding both parent and child towards a future of authentic, dignified connection, or, at the very least, a future of peace for the courageous soul who dared to reclaim their own. The journey may be arduous, the path uncertain, but the destination a life lived with integrity, serenity, and honor is a legacy beyond measure, a testament to the power of reclaiming what was always yours.